Do you think social media companies could do well? I know the answer to this, but do you think they could or should do more in terms of policing what is and is not a legitimate account? Because in my mind, I'm thinking like it's not a big ask from a web developer's perspective or like a middleware developer to be able to construct some software that just checks if the person that says that they're living in Michigan is actually in Michigan. You know, like it's
That's a really so now you're going up my tech alley because
right.
I work my main area is cybersecurity,
Mm,
and that's a really good point because it isn't, and that's a pretty fundamental thing in
mm,
cybersecurity, authentication.
yeah,
Is this source authentic?
yeah,
And are they authorized to do and say the things that they're doing and saying and accessing?
mm,
That's pretty fundamental stuff. So there's a lot of technology out there to allow for that level of authentication. Um, so it's definitely doable.
yeah,
And the social media platforms are doing a lot. And I think, Facebook has, you know, for example, implemented a number of measures to verify the authenticity of users and user accounts. There's obviously lots and lots of caveats to this.
mm,
One that comes to mind is some people that are going through some kind of transition
mm,
in their life, whether it's a gender transition or whatever transition they're going through, and they want to create a persona online. Was that authentic or is it not authentic?
yeah,
I don't know. I'm not going to get into that debate, but it's a legitimate. I think it's a legitimate caveat. But all of those things can be sorted out. The question then is there a place for anonymity then online?
yeah.
Um,
I suppose that's the
because
thing is it becomes like
there's value to anonymity.
it becomes a sort of free speech in the modern era kind of debate. Then it's like I should be able to go on and join the conversation and play with some ideas. It's in a similar way to how stand-up comedians do. Like they should be able to stand on a stage and say some nonsensical rubbish, and then
Yeah,
if it floats, if there's some claps afterwards, then great. But if there's not, then it sinks without trace, and it's no harm, no foul.
and it's the only way you can write comedy.
Right?
It's all you can sit and write stuff, but I need to do it in front of an audience to see if it lands or not.
Yeah. And
It's the only way.
I suppose the comeback on that, or the counter argument to that, is that if you, or the difference would be that if a stand-up comedian goes into a dive bar and then tries some outrageous jokes and there's silence, the worst thing that happens is that the comedian hangs his head in shame or goes and buys a drink and then walks up the stairs and then leaves, and then that's the end of it. And maybe a
That's a
few
good point.
people
Yeah,
say, oh, did you see that guy, that aid guy? Oh, that was fucking terrible. Like, that's the end
yeah,
of it, though. Whereas a guy
yeah. The
goes on
stakes.
Twitter,
There's a question. There's definitely a question of stakes
yeah,
and criticality that certainly if the president of the United States is posting rubbish on Twitter, the stakes are much, much higher
mm,
than if if I bomb on the night and my horrific jokes don't land.
yeah,
Yeah, those are worlds apart in terms of stakes. But what we're getting into is, what is and isn't true, which, at the risk of getting overly philosophical,
mm,
it's a question that has plagued the intelligence community for, well, ever since there's been intelligence.
mm,
It's because we have so much information online now. Your average schmo like you and me are now being exposed to the reality that truth is a much more complex thing. It's not binary. Things aren't
yeah.
just true and not true. It's why we have fuzzy logic. It's why we have these grays.
That's true. I remember hearing a
And,
guy
and
talk about like the difference in news and media now was that, like, back in the 60s or 70s, if a political scandal broke, it would be on the front page of, let's say, 3 newspapers, and then it would be on like CBS News and ABC, right, that night, and then everyone would hear it or see it on the news, and then they would all be shocked. They'd be like, I can't believe Nixon did this, or I can't believe. But now what happens is people say, oh, did you hear that Trump's tax returns show that he's fucking broke? And the instinctive reaction is like, people go, oh, where'd you hear that? And you go, on the news. And they go, not my news. Like, people have their own individual...
Well, that's, again, confirmation. That's confirmation bias. Once you've built this model of perfection, or you've built a model of what you think the president is or whatever, any information you get from that point forward, you'll just say, oh, well, that's got to be fake news.